everyone, Alex at Corumdale Farm. We are a heading into year 3 Oklahoma flower farm that mainly sells our flowers from our roadside stand. And today is Ranunculus planting day. I'm so excited. I feel like I've been thinking about them since April and May when I ordered our corms, and the tunnel is finally done. That video is going to come out eventually when we put all of that footage together of building the tunnel. But the tunnel is built, the beds are prepped. Eric is out there right now laying down drip irrigation in our rows. And so I get to start the process of planting all of our ranunculus. I'm so excited, really nervous, but also really excited.
There you go.
First step in planting ranunculus is soaking them. So you get them and they look like sad, dried little octopuses. Let me look here, I've got my bags. They're like sad, dried little octopuses, and you think there's no way they're gonna grow those beautiful ranunculus you see all over Instagram, but they do. But first you have to plump them up a little bit. And so I'm gonna soak mine for about 2 hours. I'm not gonna use an aerator. I might refresh the water once, but I'm just gonna soak for 2 hours. I have a lot of different varieties. I don't have mesh bags, which would be the logical way to soak a lot of them in one bucket and keep the variety separate. So maybe not the most efficient, but I'm just gonna get a bunch of buckets out so I can keep the varieties separated and labeled properly. Get them soaking while Eric is finishing the drip, and then I'll be able to plant them out. So let's get them in water, and hopefully I don't mess up losing labels and flipping varieties and stuff. Not the end of the world, but I kind of want to have everything labeled and all the colors like nicely in blocks together and not all jumbled up. So they're all in their little buckets with their labels ready to soak. Maybe not the most efficient way, especially if I had organza bags and I could put more in one bucket. But honestly, that task took me less than 15 minutes. So not bad at all. They're all there, and I'm gonna set a timer for 2 hours, come back, drain the water, and take all the buckets to the tunnel to get planting.
Show those hands.
Now we have to do the anemones. That's 1,600 corms planted, 1,300 ranunculus, 300 anemones. It is like 4:30, the sun is setting, and I would say from start to finish, it took us about 3 hours. I had my daughter helping me, going ahead of me, laying the corms out in our spacing, and then I was coming behind her and planting them, which I know definitely sped up our process because I wasn't also having to bend over and put them in the grid. We used our Hortanova netting, which is conveniently in 6-inch squares. We laid it down flat to give us somewhat of a reference point for planting the corms. I did 6-inch spacing. Some people even do 4-inch spacing, and so that's why I wasn't worried about being like perfectly 6-inch, because I do have that wiggle room for some of them being more like 4 inches, and they'll be fine. But we have one row of our 96-foot tunnel. It's about 90 feet planted with ranunculus, and then our second row, which is 4 feet wide, went about a third of the way with ranunculus, and then the rest of our anemones, and I have a full row and 2/3 left to plant. We will do future videos of what else we have planned for our tunnel space, since only a row and a third was filled up with 1,300 ranunculus, which is crazy. But let's head back to the cottage and I'll go over all of the varieties I chose. We'll put pictures on the screen because you can't talk about ranunculus without just like looking at their beautiful pastel perfection. And I'll explain to you kind of why I chose the varieties I did. So we're going to use some movie magic here. So in the video, you would have just seen me plant everything, but it's easier for me to go through the varieties here at the end, but in the cottage, so we can show you pictures up on the screen, because it's no fun talking about variety names and not actually get to see them and visualize them and stuff. So how should I say this? If you want to hear the story of how we went from 500 ranunculus to 1,300 ranunculus and the great corm caper that occurred, I will link our latest live video in the description. And in the beginning of that video, I tell the story of what happened and all of the drama and how we ended up with like more than double ranunculus. It was really stressful for a while, but at the end of the day, not too mad that we have more ranunculus than we originally planned for. But when I ordered ranunculus back in May, I chose the amandine variety. Amandine is not the absolute cheapest variety of ranunculus, but it's on the cheaper end of the variety spectrum. And the reason I chose them is in my research, I read that they are a bit more heat tolerant, that they're not quite as sensitive to the heat temperatures. They're still going to shut down over 80 degrees, and when the soil temperature starts to get warm, ranunculus are not going to grow in the heat. But they are a little tougher in getting to that shutdown point than like Labelle, for example, that I read about and I'm not growing. Labelle blooms earlier than amandine, so that makes sense. It wants to bloom in cooler temperatures and stuff. And I think you could grow those in Oklahoma, zone 7A. But I wanted, for my first time growing ranunculus in mass, to kind of really go with the varieties that I had the best chance at. But we'll see. I'm excited. I now ended up with 2 different varieties, so we'll talk about that. And I'm going to label well and really pay attention and see if I really end up preferring amandine versus the other variety I got once I actually grow them in our conditions. But I have 5 different colors of amandine. I should also say that amandine produces more stems than the other variety we'll go through here, but the blooms sometimes can be a bit smaller than the other variety. And so it's a little bit of a trade-off. It's like you get more stems, but maybe not like all the absolute biggest double that you love to see on Instagram. And the other variety might give me a bit fewer stems, but really like those Mondo gorgeous, seems like it has 1,000 petals kind of ranunculus. And so again, I'm really excited now to get the opportunity to trial them side by side and see if I end up having a preference or if I like both of them for different reasons, and I'll continue to grow both. So I'm very interested. So stay tuned, obviously, in April of next year when I'm hopefully harvesting all of these beauties. But This box is from Ball, Ball Seed Company, who works with Edney, which is our bulb supplier. So that's where I got them from. I ordered, like I said, back in May, and at the time of ordering, a bunch of colors were already sold out that I wanted. So some of these are like, I'm not upset. I mean, every ranunculus is going to be beautiful, but I was kind of hoping for some different ones that didn't end up working out, but that's okay. It was a good lesson for next year. I probably need to be ordering more in April than in May if I'm really set on specific colors. But first up, I have Amandine, or I guess Amandine would be the right name usage. Amandine Cream. This is obviously a very pale, like a light pale butter yellow color. It's probably on the lightest end spectrum that I grow because I grow retail. I'm not selling these to florists and for wedding and event work. And so my customers tend to like really bold, bright, saturated colors. And if I remember correctly, I think I was trying to go for one of the bright yellows and they didn't have it. So I ended up choosing cream, but I'm a pastel girl, so I'm excited to see that one. Next one is Amandine Orange. My husband's favorite color is orange. I think my customers are going to love the orange, so I chose orange. Yes. This one is Amandine Black. I don't love this color, but as part of my social media marketing in the spring of last year before I ordered, I did a collage. I'll see if I can put a screenshot of that post up on the video here. I did a collage and I basically asked my customers, I was like, vote for your favorites. Like, what are your favorite colors here? And I said, I don't like this color at all. And my husband said, I bet you all your customers are gonna like this color. I said, no way, it looks like a vampire flower. And he was completely right. Spoiler alert, husband's usually correct. And people loved it. And I'm not making this personal. I think it's completely fine to like the darker tones. I'm just more of a pastel girl, especially in spring. I want like soft Easter pastel colors. I don't want like the bold saturated colors. Like that's more what I want on like my September table, not April. But everyone loved this color. I suspect maybe it's one of those colors where it doesn't photograph quite the same way it looks in person. So I also could be completely convinced when I harvest this flower in person, and I might really love it. But I have Amandine Black. These are all in quantities of 100. When you buy wholesale from these big wholesalers, in order to get these prices that you pay, they sell them in big quantities. And so if you're a newer grower, it can become a bit harder because you might not be ready to grow 1,000 ranunculus, and you should not grow 1,000 ranunculus in your first year or two. And so you might just want to pick like a mix, like 100 ranunculus mix, or just pick one color. I mean, pinks, my goodness, no one is going to disagree with a pink ranunculus, and you don't need to have 100 different varieties to offer. Just pick one color that's 100 and start with that one. Next up, okay, and I just said pink is popular. This one is Amandine Barbie, and it is Barbie pink. That's the one I'm excited about in this batch. And then last in this group is Amandine Purple Jean. It is purple, but it's a little bit of a like variegated two-tony looking color that I think seems really interesting. Again, not necessarily my preference, but I'm looking at the color palette I'm putting together for my customers. Unique, interesting, bright, bold. That's what I'm going for retail. And so it will be interesting to see if I have any clear winners or favorites, or maybe I'm just going to be proved totally wrong and end up liking vampire flowers at the end of the day. So that was my ball order from Amandine. That was 500. This is my original order. Again, go watch that story of how I end up with this other box I'm about to go through. So like I said, everything was sold out. So when I went back to Ball to maybe try to solve the problem that occurred, everything was sold out. And so I searched and searched, and I'm like, who has ranunculus left in not the like absolutely most expensive variety where you're paying like well over $1 a corm, which can become not the most profitable for the way I'm selling, because I'm not selling to event and wedding florists where I can charge like $5 a stem sort of thing to offset the cost to grow those more expensive varieties like Coloni and some of the other Italians. And so Awnings, someone tell me how to pronounce this correctly, is a Holland wholesale company. It's where we got our peonies from. They sell tulips and lilies and awesome stuff. They still had ranunculus in stock, and their variety they had is the Elegance series. And so if you're putting it in a line of expense, you have like the Tecolodi is the cheapest. That's the one you can get from like Eden Brothers and other much cheaper sites. They tend to give you more singles, so not as many doubles, and it can be a great starter flower option to learn the ranunculus, how to grow ranunculus without spending too much money. And then you would probably have Amandine next in expense, and then after Amandine would be Elegance, but they're still kind of close together in cost. Elegance will often give you maybe slightly more stems, but they'll be bigger. And again, this is what I've read in my research, but I'm really excited to experience it for myself to see if what others are saying happened in their environments happens for me, especially because we are much hotter and we have much shorter springs. So perhaps this ends up being true in places like the Northwest and the Midwest, where it stays colder for longer. So we'll see how they perform in what I would consider a much warmer climate that we have in Oklahoma. But I have Elegance, and I'm really excited about that. They are like, when you think of perfection with ranunculus, it's probably an Elegance ranunculus that you're looking at. They had a discount bulk sale option for AFCFG members. AFCFG is the Association for Cut Flower Growers that you can join. It's a yearly fee, and I think it's completely worth it. They have tons of articles, tons of videos. They have a private Facebook page. It's where all of the big growers that you look at on Instagram and sometimes are envious of, I would guarantee you they're probably members of the AFCFG. And at Awnings, they had a special where you got what I believe is 500 of their pastel mix, and then you got to pick 3 more packs of 100 different colors. So it's like you get a bulk mix, and then you get to personalize 300 more for a total of 800 for a set price. And that price I thought was very reasonable and wonderful for, at the time, I was just desperately trying to find ranunculus. And so first up is the giant bag that I showed you in the shot earlier. I'm trying to be gentle and not break off all these little legs. But this is 500, and it lost its tag, of course. But it's we'll put the name on the screen. It's like Dulce Pastello mix or something. And it's a beautiful mix of a variety of pinks and I think a little yellows, maybe a little bit of whites, if I remember correctly. Beautiful mix. Not going to be disappointed in any of those colors. And then, like I said, I got to pick 3 colors myself. And I picked, in this one, I picked Clementine, which is a beautiful orange tone. I think it's like a tangerine orange. I picked, oh, this is Italian, and I learned Spanish in school. Giallo. Giallo? Giallo, it's like a yellowy orange, if I remember correctly. And last but not least, I picked Viola. So at the time, I didn't think I was going to be getting the ball ranunculus, and I knew my customers wanted a dark, deep, purpley color that I lovingly called vampire flowers. And Viola fit the bill for that one. And so now I'm going to have 200 beautiful, precious vampire flowers. But that's all of the varieties of ranunculus that we are growing. I'm going to try to plant them in blocks, or I already tried to plant them in blocks. So you could see if I was successful in doing that. But last to show you is anemones. I've never grown anemones before, but they're similar-ish to ranunculus in the process. So like you pre-soak them, you plant them about the same spacing and depth. They might bloom a little bit earlier and overlap with your ranunculus timing. I wanted to try them, especially if they're going to bloom earlier for me, and I could be including them with our tulips or towards the end of our tulip season as additional stems for our bouquets as we then move into ranunculus season in April. But because I was nervous about them, I only bought 300, which I know is a lot, but they were not very expensive. I got them from Leo Burby. I'm not too afraid that if I totally fail on these, it's some like huge investment ding on our bottom line. But again, I did my research about warm climate, and my research kind of led me to the Maron, and Jerusalem varieties being much more heat tolerant. I believe there's Galilee and another option. I think those prefer a bit cooler temperatures for a longer period of time that we just don't have. So I stuck with those. So I have Jerusalem pink, bright fuchsia, bold pink that would just look awesome with our bright and bold tulips. And then the ranunculus, Jerusalem blue. Blue is such a rare flower color. I think would be really unique and fun to include in our bouquets. And then because I wanted to compare a little bit within variety to see if one clearly does better than the other, I got Miron, what are these names? My goodness. Pink, which is also a bright fuchsia pink, but I want to be able to compare it to see if there was a noticeable difference. So that's everything we're growing. Ranunculus are very fussy, or at least I should say high maintenance from a time perspective, which is why we end up being able to charge what we do when they finally bloom. And so I'm going to be putting low hoops over the rows that I planted. And when the temperature in the tunnel gets below 28, I will cover them. And when the temperature in the tunnel and outside is above freezing, they will get uncovered and the sides of the tunnel will go up so I can get constant fresh airflow in the tunnel, because a big problem can be not just rotting in ground, but it can be fungal diseases from the higher humidity that ends up happening when you have the tunnel closed and everything covered. And so especially in Oklahoma, where we tend to not get that cold during the day, but we will get very cold at night, it is going to be a lot of on-off, I suspect. We have very few days, typically sometimes in January and February, where we actually stay below freezing all day long and I can just leave things covered. That's actually not going to happen very often for us. And so I'm going to have to probably even set a timer on my phone and teach the kids how to help me do that, because the last thing I want is to like bake them and overheat them and get them really upset, or to be lazy and not get my hiney out there when it's cold and they get frostburn and get really unhappy. So I'm going to need to be very dedicated in the on and off, but it's worth it. And I can't wait for April.
Okay, here I come.
Farm, and I'm pretending to be mommy. I'm going to plant plug trees and snapdragons and zinnias and expert